Welcome back to the 240SX project where we do some of our final touches here before we go to tuning. One of the things that I kept forgetting during the swap is that when I was coming to an end is that I would have to relocate the battery to the rear. That is because the 2JZ intercooler pipes go out to the passenger and driver side apron side, of which the passenger side on the tray had the battery. That tray was very rusted out, so I cut it. But I'm using zero gauge wire, and this fuse box here is where some of the power will have to go to. I'm going to leave that up to the tuner because my tuner is going to be hooking up the Pro EFI, and I want him to be able to label out his triggers the way he wants. So what I did here is you can see the grommet that used to be where the chassis harness used to go. Because I got rid of all of the power amenities and creature comforts that this car came with, I went ahead and reused that grommet since the wiring harness no longer went that way. Also, as far as the routing of the zero gauge wire, I'm trying to figure out if I want to run it in the wheel well, into the engine bay, or right over the top here, but I think the wheel well is definitely a no-go. May run up this way along the frame well. However, I do have a fender brace that will go on, so we'll come back to that in a little bit, probably after it comes back from tuning, to figure out which way I want to route it. The way though, it does have to go under the carpet here as it runs to the back of the car. I'm going to put the battery in the passenger rear side of the trunk of the car. I got this piece from a car audio store. I'm going to have the zero gauge going on one end, and then the starter alternator or any other fuse box items that need to go in here, I'll let the tuner do that part as well. Time to mount the fans. So for this swap, because I did not use the Chase Bays radiator kit, I used a Megan Racing SR20 radiator. So what that means that there's going to be no room to run the fans between the radiator and the motor, and this is going to be pusher fans. So I'm going to mount the fans on the other side of the radiator and have it push air through the radiator and cool that way. Now, I know a lot of people are not a fan of the fan straps or the fan zip ties that go through the radiator, but this is not going to be a daily driver. This is going to be an occasional, probably a couple hundred miles a year. So I figure I'd do this for now until I eventually maybe change fan setups. And here off to the side, I decided to finally mount my tile blow-off valve on the upper intercooler pipe. Now the 240SX, as opposed to the Supra, the 240SX only has one hood latch, and that is the fiberglass one that's connected to the hood. So not very safe. Decided to go with the AeroLatch hood pins, and this is going to be the first time I have ever done this. So after a couple preliminary measurements, I went ahead and drilled my holes. And once the holes were drilled, I went ahead and took my hood pins and started mock fitting them up. And the hood pins really aren't anything complicated looking. It's just kind of like a really long bolt with a eye loop at the end of it. But put it through the hole and get a general idea as far as where you think it's going to go. And then you can go ahead and set up the gel here in a second to measure. I did say gel, but I really meant some type of axle grease. So I'm going to go ahead and put that on here, and then I will drop the hood on top of it to see where it lands. As I lower the hood down, it's going to make contact with that grease, and when I lift it back up, the grease is going to let me know where my drill points are. But in all honesty, I kind of messed this part up because you really should be cutting out the webbing under the hoods. That way you can let the hood come down even farther, and you can get a really good exact point as far as where you're going to drill, because in the end, as the hood drops that extra inch or two, it's going to throw your angle just a little bit off, and the measurements actually won't be right. So you'll see in this segment, I'm drilling through that extra webbing or that material. And again, you should cut through this first before you start drilling so you can allow the hood to come all the way down. But these were the initial holes I made. Thankfully, because these are the AeroCatch hood pins, you do have a wide area that you'll chunk out of this anyways when you're cutting out for the final piece, but this is what it would look like, and you can actually see that I did move the holes over by about half an inch once I realized that after cutting the webbing out that the hood did close just a little bit differently. So again, you'll notice here it's a very large area that you're going to line out to cut, so that takes care of some of the drilling issues in which I made. You won't see it in the end. And as you do this, you're going to want to do the inside and the outside of the template, and the template is reused in the final product. But the instructions they give you do show you that, and there's a couple other videos on YouTube that will show you how to do this as well. And this is what it will look like. I used a small cutoff wheel to go ahead and cut out the hole here, and then I used the Dremel to go ahead and smooth out all the edges around the cut area. So once your holes are cut, this is about what they should look like, and then you can take your hood latch and pins and start marking the holes out to drill. You don't necessarily have to mark this out. You can just leave that hood latch mounted inside the hole there. You could just drill straight through, but I guess I'm just doing a little bit of redundancy here, but I just took the drill bit straight through and drilled till it passed through. And this is what your hole should look like. You can see that extra webbing underneath that I had cut out later and finally got my measurements correct. So I dodged a bullet here with messing up this hood. This was very scary because these hoods nowadays are nowhere near as cheap as they used to be. So once everything was settled and everything lined up properly, I went ahead and started screwing everything down. What I really wanted here was to have the hood latches kind of line up along with the hood scoop there, rather the hood vent, and just kind of, I like being symmetrical, I like being even as we should here. So a lot of 240SX owners would talk about how long the throttle cables are from their factory throttle cables, but what I did is I grabbed one from a B16 Honda Civic that I parted out years ago, and it turned out to be the perfect length, and it looks OEM, looks great. I'll show you how I mounted on the other side, because the Hondas for these throttle cables, they kind of like clip in through the hole they have, but they don't do that with the 240, and I had to drill the hole just a little bit larger, and then I used a I forgot what you call a C-clamp or pin or whatever, and opened up the clip and then pushed it over, and then it snapped into place, so it holds the throttle cable in place here, and it won't slip out or anything. So looking pretty good. Now, this is a leftover Weapon R piece that originally came with the car. I'm not sure if it's for a radiator or if it's an oil catch can, but it did not have any oil residue in it. I'm pretty sure I could just use it as a radiator overflow, right? Because some people use Pepsi cans, so why wouldn't this work? But turned out pretty good. Went ahead and drilled my own holes and then mounted it inside, and the fender will cover up the holes on the other side. So, but doing a quick look over here to make sure everything's looking square as I'm getting towards the end now to start putting in fluids and load the car up onto the trailer to take to SQC Tuning over in Rio Rancho. I know some people have their own ways of breaking the motor. What I've done on all my motors is I use a pretty conventional standard non-synthetic oil just for startup and for a couple of minutes of running, and then I will usually dump it out, do it again, and then do some drive around the blocks, set the rings, and then I switch over to the synthetic during the rest of the break-in period. So I let my tuner know that this does have some standard 530 oil in it, so that way he knows to dump it out after a few minutes of running after the startup. And also I will be using the Toyota pink coolant, as one should, for 2JZ. So now we're loading up to head to SQC Tuning, which is based out of SRD Mechanics in Rio Rancho, New Mexico, and we will see how we come out in the end as far as power. So while the 240 is at SRD Mechanics, I did pick up an Evo 8, and I will be playing with this until I get the 240SX back. Stay tuned.